Hey, deep divers. Welcome back for another deep dive. You ready to go deep?
Always.
All right, so today we're diving into a topic that's sparked a lot of debate. And we're looking at it through the lens of an article called Noahide Laws and Our Friends with the Little Hats. Have you ever heard of the Noahide Laws?
I have. And this article,
Hmm.
it's something else. It's a wild ride.
Okay. So before we get into all the ins and outs and all the details of the article, let's just, start with the basics. What are the Noahide Laws?
Well, the Noahide laws are sometimes called the Seven Laws of Noah. They're essentially a set of moral rules that, according to Jewish tradition, God gave to Noah after the flood.
Okay.
The thing is, these laws are said to apply to all of humanity, not just to those who follow Judaism.
Oh, so we're not even talking about like the Ten Commandments or anything.
Exactly. We're talking pre-Abraham, pre-Moses, even pre-Tower of Babel,
Wow. So this is like way, way back.
way back.
Okay, so a potential universal code of conduct, like a moral rule book for everyone on Earth.
Yeah, you could say that.
That's a big deal. But this article, it frames the Noahide laws in a kind of a, cautious light.
Yeah.
What's the author's main concern?
Well, the author is really wary of the Shabbat movement within Orthodox Judaism and their efforts to promote these laws globally.
Mm-hmm.
The article even suggests that their goal might be to reestablish a world order like the one before the Tower of Babel, a world united under this one system.
Like a one world government type of thing?
Well, the article doesn't use that exact phrase, but yeah, you're picking up what they're putting down.
That's kind of a big leap, though, right? From, these ancient laws to like some sort of global takeover. Why would the Shabbat movement be pushing for, global adoption of these rules? What's their end game, according to the author?
That's where things get interesting. The author suggests that the Shabbat movement is seeking to exert significant influence, maybe even sees themselves as having a leadership role in this new world order.
So we're talking potential power dynamics here.
Yeah.
Before we, dive into all that, let's break down these Noahide laws. What are the actual rules that are supposedly meant for all humankind?
Well, the article lists them as prohibitions against idolatry, blasphemy, murder, theft, sexual immorality, eating a limb torn from a live animal, and the requirement to establish courts of justice.
Okay, so those sound, like, on the surface at least, pretty reasonable, right?
Yeah, I mean, who's going to argue with not murdering people or, stealing?
Right, exactly. So where does the author see the potential danger in these kind of, straightforward rules?
You've hit the nail on the head. It's not the content of the laws themselves. It's who gets to interpret them and enforce them.
Ah, so it's all about the power of interpretation.
Precisely.
And the potential for these laws to be manipulated.
For control, depending on who's calling the shots.
Exactly. And that's where the article really starts to connect the dots. The Noahide laws, the Chabad movement, and this idea of a global power shift.
Right. It all starts to come together.
This is getting intense. But before we explore that further, I'm really curious about another aspect of the article. The author's perspective on Jewish identity.
Ah, yes, the Jewish spirit.
Yeah.
This is where the author gets into some really controversial territory, making distinctions between Hebrews and Jews and proposing a very specific view on Jewish history and lineage.
So they're rewriting the narrative.
In a way,
Yes.
they're claiming that modern Jews are primarily descended from the Khazars, a group that converted to Judaism centuries ago, rather than from ancient Hebrews.
Wow, okay. So not just challenging traditional understandings of Jewish lineage, but also suggesting that this so-called Jewish spirit has specific characteristics that shape Jewish behavior.
And influence their interactions with the world. That's the gist of it.
This author is making some bold claims. I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together now. The Noahide laws, the Shabbat movement, this Jewish spirit, and this idea of a shifting global power dynamic.
It's quite a puzzle.
Yeah, it's almost like a conspiracy thriller unfolding.
A bit, yeah.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
We've got a lot more to uncover.
Stay tuned, deep divers, because things are about to get even more interesting as we explore the author's take on the Holocaust, the founding of Israel, and their proposed solution to what they call the Jewish problem.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Buckle up.
All right. So we're back. And before we kind of shifted gears, we were talking about the author's take on Jewish identity and this whole Jewish spirit concept.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
There is.
And I'm trying to figure out how this ties back into the Noahide laws.
Okay.
Because it feels like the author is building this case for a grand conspiracy with the Shabbat movement right at the center, pushing for global adoption of these laws as part of some kind of larger power play.
Right.
But where does the author see this all headed? Like, what's the end game?
Well, That's where the author's take on the founding of Israel comes in.
Okay.
They see the existence of a Jewish homeland as a key piece of this puzzle, arguing that it fundamentally changes the equation when it comes to Jewish integration into other societies.
So the author is saying that with Israel in the picture,
Yes.
there's no longer a need for Jewish communities to exist within other nations.
That's essentially their argument. They suggest that Israel provides a solution to what they call the Jewish problem,
right.
eliminating the need for Jews to be dispersed among other populations.
So less potential for conflict.
Right.
Okay, I see where they're going with this. But it seems like a very simplistic view of a complex issue.
Sure.
Or are they suggesting that having a homeland justifies any actions taken by the State of Israel, regardless of their impact on other groups?
You've hit on a critical point. The author doesn't shy away from criticizing Israel's policies,
Okay.
but they frame these actions within the context of this broader narrative about Jewish identity and global power dynamics.
Right. So even actions that might be seen as negative or harmful are somehow justified because of this larger scheme.
You could interpret it that way.
Yes. We talked earlier about the author's claims about Israel's treatment of Christians.
Yeah.
They mentioned things like surveillance of vandalism of churches, even broadcasting pornography into Christian neighborhoods.
It's pretty disturbing stuff.
If true.
If true. Absolutely. But remember, we're hearing this all from the perspective of the author, who clearly has a specific agenda.
Right. We have to take it with a grain of salt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's crucial to seek out diverse perspectives and consider the broader context before forming any judgments.
Absolutely. We're not here to endorse any particular viewpoint, but rather to explore the ideas presented in the article and encourage critical thinking.
Right.
And speaking of critical thinking, this article has definitely gotten my wheels turning.
In what way?
Well, the author connects the Noahide laws to the biblical story of the Tower of Babel,
Okay.
suggesting that both represent attempts to unify humanity under a single system,
Right.
potentially leading to a rebellion against God.
Interesting.
It's a pretty thought-provoking parallel, wouldn't you say?
It is. The author seems to view the push for a universal code of conduct, whether it's through the Noahide laws or some other means, as a dangerous overreach of human ambition.
So like a repetition of the hubris that led to the downfall of the Tower of Babel.
Exactly.
Wow. So the author is basically framing this as a battle between human desire for control and divine will.
You could see it that way.
It's almost like we're stepping into a biblical epic here.
It's definitely got that kind of grand scale feel to it.
I'm starting to understand why this article has generated so much controversy.
Yeah.
It's not just about politics or history. It's tapping into deep-seated religious beliefs and anxieties about the future of humanity.
Absolutely. And it's important to acknowledge the emotional weight these topics carry for many people. Even if we don't agree with the author's conclusions,
Right.
we can still appreciate the passion and conviction behind their arguments.
Absolutely. Now, before we move on to the author's concluding remarks, there are a few themes that run throughout this article that I think are worth highlighting,
Okay, what are those?
especially for those of us trying to make sense of all this information.
Right, like trying to find the signal in the noise.
Well said. One theme that jumps out is the author's constant emphasis on this Jewish spirit.
Yeah.
This idea that there's a specific, unchanging essence that defines Jewish people and influences their behavior.
Right. It's a controversial concept, to say the least.
And it's closely tied to the author's claims about the Khazar origin of modern Jews.
Which, as we've discussed, is a fringe theory not supported by mainstream scholarship.
Right. It's important to remember that reducing an entire group of people to a single unchanging spirit can be very dangerous.
Absolutely. It could lead to stereotypes, prejudices, and even discrimination.
Exactly. Another thing that really stands out is the author's skepticism towards the Holocaust narrative.
Yeah.
They seem to downplay the historical significance of this horrific event while also using it to justify their views on Israel and the Jewish problem.
This is a particularly sensitive and emotionally charged topic,
It is.
and it's important to approach it with the utmost respect for the victims and survivors of the Holocaust.
Absolutely. We must also be mindful of the dangers of minimizing or denying the reality of this tragedy, which continues to have profound implications for our understanding of history, morality, and human nature.
Well said. It's crucial to engage in thoughtful and informed discussions about the Holocaust,
Yes.
relying on credible historical sources and acknowledging the devastating impact it had on millions of people.
And finally, I want to touch on the author's use of language.
Okay.
And their tendency to make sweeping generalizations about entire groups of people. They frequently use terms like Gentiles and Jews in a way that reinforces a sense of separation and even antagonism between these groups.
That's a crucial point. It's important to be mindful of the power of language and to avoid perpetuating stereotypes and harmful generalization.
Yes.
Remember, individuals within any group are diverse and complex,
Right?
and it's inaccurate and unfair to attribute certain characteristics or motivations to an entire population based on their religious or ethnic background.
Well said. It's crucial to approach these discussions with nuanced empathy and a commitment to understanding the complexities of history, identity, and human relationships.
This has been a truly fascinating, if at times challenging, exploration of the Noahide laws and the author's unique perspective on their implications.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for part 3 of this deep dive, where we'll delve into the author's concluding remarks and grapple with the broader questions raised by this thought-provoking article.
Okay, deep divers, we're back and ready to wrap up this exploration of the Noahide laws.
It's been a wild ride.
This article, it's like a roller coaster through history, religion, global politics.
All sparked by these ancient rules given to Noah.
I know, right? It's amazing how much ground we've covered.
We really have.
From the origins of the Noahide laws to the author's controversial take on Jewish identity, the role of Israel.
Definitely challenged us to think critically about this information.
It has. Now I'm curious, how does the author bring all these threads together in their conclusion?
Well, they double down on their belief that this push for global adoption of the Noahide laws is a sign of a world on the brink of major change.
Okay.
They see the Shabbat movement's involvement as evidence of a deliberate effort to reshape the global order, leading to a scenario that they view with, significant apprehension.
So they're sticking to this idea of a grand plan orchestrated by the Shabbat movement
Right.
with the Noahide laws as the central tool for, establishing their vision of a new world order.
That's their argument.
And they reiterate this connection between the Noahide laws and the Tower of Babel,
Right.
suggesting that both represent attempts to unify humanity under a single system that ultimately challenge divine will.
Yeah, it's a pretty stark picture.
It is. It's almost like they're presenting us with a choice. Embrace this new world order orchestrated by the Shabbat movement, or resist it and potentially face divine consequences.
It really highlights their anxieties about the direction of society and the potential for human ambition to lead us astray.
Okay, so we've explored the author's arguments, we've dissected their claims, grappled with their conclusions. But I think what's really fascinating about this whole deep dive is that it goes beyond the specifics of the Noahide laws and touches on some universal questions that we all face in a world of, diverse beliefs and values.
I completely agree. This article has sparked some important questions about the nature of power,
Yeah.
the challenges of coexistence,
Right.
the search for meaning in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable.
Exactly. Like, the author's concern about a universal legal system raises questions about the feasibility of finding common ground in a world where cultural and religious differences are so deeply ingrained.
Can we truly create a system of governance that respects individual beliefs while upholding fundamental ethical principles?
That's a tough question.
It is a question philosophers and political scientists have been grappling with for centuries.
Right, and this article, with its focus on the Noahide laws and their potential global implications, brings that question into sharp focus.
It does.
And what about the author's emphasis on a Jewish spirit? Makes us think about the broader issue of identity and how our perceptions of ourselves and others shape our understanding of the world.
How do we balance the need for individual expression with a desire for belonging and community?
Right, it's this delicate dance between the personal and the collective.
Exactly. And this article, with its provocative claims about Jewish identity and behavior, reminds us of the importance of approaching these discussions with sensitivity, nuance, and a willingness to challenge our own assumptions.
Absolutely. I think the real value of this deep dive lies not just in the information itself, but in the questions it raises and the conversations it inspires.
It's a reminder that knowledge is a journey, not a destination.
Well said. This deep dive has been a true exploration full of twists and turns.
It has.
And we hope it's left you, our listeners, with more than just facts. We hope it sparked a curiosity to keep digging, to keep questioning,
Yeah.
and to keep seeking a deeper understanding of the world around us.
There's always more to discover.
So, deep divers, until our next plunge into the depths of knowledge, keep your minds open, your curiosity alive. And remember, there's always more to discover,